Broadcast is live, it says.
We are live. I do believe. Waiting for YouTube to catch up. Yeah, we're live.
Excellent.
Awesome. Should I give the intro then? Okay, well, welcome everybody. This is our first team rivalry live show of the season, and so we're what?
I was getting everything we said. I was getting to like 6 seconds later. I realized I had YouTube open.
Oh yeah, you got to close YouTube. All right, this is the technical difficulty stream. Yes, we're going to talk some football, but yeah, this was our opportunity to try and figure out how to do some more live streaming and stuff like that. So we're using StreamYards for the first time, getting the bugs worked out there, and we're going to talk some football now. So I don't know, any opening thoughts? It's week 3 already. I can't believe it.
Week 3 after a fairly bizarre week 2 in the West Division.
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on over there.
That whole race on the west side has completely opened up now. Like Northwestern, yeah. I was looking at it today. Northwestern is still in it now. I mean,
Northwestern, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I understand they lost to Duke. That's fine. They're not a Big Ten team, and we'll talk about this in a little bit later. But
right,
they don't look good at all. But they still have the one Big Ten win, so they're technically still in it. So
right.
I mean, nobody's running away with it. And then the East is having the exact opposite problem where like nobody's running away with it, but because everybody keeps winning.
Yeah.
It's losing as opposed to winning. That's kind of funny how that works.
Right.
Anyway, but we can get into the games and all that we wanted to talk about.
All right. Yeah, I apologize here. I guess I wasn't as ready as I thought I was, but
we're having fun. It's all good.
We're having fun. But yeah, so here we are. I guess I should say hello, football fans. We are sitting here live. I'm Cliff. That's Mac. Over there. That's Mac over there.
I'm here.
The website. I guess let's cover all the bases first. The website, teamrivalry.com. Not rivalry.com. If you go to rivalry.com, that is a betting site that we are not affiliated with. Teamrivalry.com is our website. Where do we go on the socials now?
Well, we're here on YouTube for one, so go ahead and hit like, subscribe if you're watching this late. Yeah, do that because that would really help us out. We're also on Twitter at rivalryb1g. That's the number 1. Because we're number 1.
Excellent. And hello to the new subscribers. Thank you for everybody who is already subscribed. Hello and welcome and thank you to our new subscribers. We're crawling along, but we're getting there. I was debating as to whether or not we start with the West Division or the East Division. I almost feel like we should start with the West Division just to get it out of the way because it looks like there's not as much to talk about over there.
There's really not. It really isn't.
And what was so the deal then is, because I noticed this too, and I know you covered it in the trash talk, that everybody in the East Division is 2-0. Everybody in the West Division is not undefeated. So they've all lost at least one game.
Except Minnesota.
Except for Minnesota, who is just pouncing on their opponents, and it looks like they're going to do that again this week. But yeah, you want to go West Division first?
Yeah, let's go ahead and knock that out.
All right. So on the West Division, we start with Purdue at Syracuse. Now, I noticed this. Okay, so the tie-in here is that Purdue lost to Penn State, right? Week 1.
Mm-hmm.
But Urban Meyer actually picked Purdue to win. And I think that plays into where Purdue's going. I think they're having a rough start, but they won last week.
Yeah, I think they won a shutout, didn't they?
Was that a shutout?
I think it was, yeah.
Purdue at Syracuse. Well, they're So we've got on our website, they've outscored their opponents 87-35, which puts them in pretty stiff competition with Syracuse. They've outscored their opponents 79-14.
Wow.
Purdue's offense is looking kind of slow and steady. They've got a slow and steady aspect to them. That was the other thing. Purdue's offense is slow and steady. Purdue's defense seems to be an all or nothing unit. Based on the box score I was looking at, it looks like their defense is either right on top of it or they don't even know they're playing football anymore. But you're a little more familiar with Syracuse. You've actually been to the Carrier Dome or the JMA Wireless Dome, whatever it's called now.
Did they rename it?
I think they did. I think it's the JMA Wireless Dome now.
That's so lame. The Carrier Dome. That's like I don't know much about Syracuse, but I mean that's supposed to be like a classic venue. I thought.
Well,
like,
it was.
It was. It's the Carrier Dome. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Okay. So Syracuse is kind of an interesting thing. So yeah, they're actually looking really good this year, which is, I mean, they don't usually look very good, but this year they're doing all right. They apparently beat Louisville week 1 in a bit of a blowout. I can't remember the actual score, but I'm a little bit surprised by that. They're 2-0 right now.
Right.
Which is kind of crazy. I mean, Purdue is 1-1, but their one loss is against Penn State. Penn State's obviously in contention for the East Division Championship right now.
Right. And that was still a tight game, though. That was only
a tight game.
That was a field goal, wasn't it? 4 points?
Something like that. It was pretty close.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, this could be an interesting matchup. So the points I wanted to make with this game was that it doesn't really, I don't know exactly which way this game would go. So
okay,
with Purdue losing to Penn State in week 1, I mean, yeah, that's a setback. But like I said, they're still very much alive in the West Division right now. So they really shouldn't be concerned about Big Ten aspirations right now, especially going up against, their last, I think this is their last wait, no, they've played the one Big Ten team, so they should have one more non-conference, but that might be later. I mean, beating Syracuse at this point would go a long way in reestablishing their confidence moving into Big Ten play, especially since like Syracuse blew out Louisville, they blew out UConn. They're averaging almost 40 points a game. They're pretty stiff competition right now. So if Purdue is able to go into the Carrier Dome, because I refuse to call it anything else, then that would be a really good win for them. That would really help out their confidence moving forward. I would like them in this game anyway, just because I think Purdue's defense is a little bit better. I think Purdue probably would have also beaten Louisville on a neutral field. So I would like Purdue in this game for sure.
Yeah, they're Syracuse is favored, but it looks to me like they're only favored by 1.5.
Is that it?
So I guess if we call that a field goal, that's going to be a tight game. I think it's winnable by Purdue.
That's home field advantage is all that is.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and they're going to because they're going to Syracuse. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely winnable. What's your prediction here for this game?
Yeah, I mean, I'm giving Purdue the edge. I'm going to say that they'll probably win 35-31, but I mean, that's a high scoring game. If Purdue gets any sort of a decent defense figured out, which they did have that shutout, so maybe they do.
Maybe they do. Yeah.
And at that point, it's, Purdue's looking good.
Right.
Yeah.
Their next game, they have one more non-conference game against Florida Atlantic.
Okay.
Which, any other season, I would say, yeah, that's almost a gimme, but this season this is a weird one.
You never know. It's always a weird thing when Purdue and Minnesota are the two best teams in the West Division.
Right.
Like, let's not forget Wisconsin and Nebraska, for all their faults, are also in that division.
Right.
So.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and we'll get to Nebraska here in a minute. Our second game is Southern Illinois at Northwestern. Now, okay, so Northwestern, speaking of Nebraska, Northwestern just barely beat Nebraska, but Nebraska has fallen apart. So I don't know where that win is going to stand. as far as Northwestern's record. Against Duke, Northwestern had what looked like a disastrous first quarter, but they adjusted somehow, and they stuck with Duke, I think, through the last 3 quarters of the game. But it was too late because they were holding even, and Duke already had a 14-point lead on them. Northwestern is going to definitely need this as a pick-me-up. How do you think they look against? And I guess, what do we have against Southern Illinois? Southern Illinois is 0-2 going into this game.
Mm-hmm.
Northwestern is heavily favored, and again, this is one of those non-conference games where Northwestern should just walk in and just assert their will against Southern Illinois, and that should be the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
But as we know, Northwestern is a bit unpredictable. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm really not sure what to make of the Duke loss.
Yeah.
I mean, we're Big Ten guys. We focus on the Big Ten. We're not national. We just, I don't know a lot about Duke, so I can't say right now like if losing to Duke is okay, because Duke, I don't actually know Duke's record right now, if you have that by chance, but I just
Duke is 1-0.
Oh, so Northwestern was their first game.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's kind of worse, honestly, I think, in my opinion.
Well, I'm sorry. They were 1-0 going into the Northwestern game.
Okay, so now they're 2-0.
I apologize. Give me a second here. Yeah, they should be 2-0 now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so maybe they're on to something. I mean, it's early in the year. Northwestern with one loss is, like I said, still alive. So it's early. Who knows? But I just feel like they really shouldn't have lost to Duke. I just, looking at that game on paper, I did not see that coming at all.
Yeah. Duke is 2-0 now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess to talk about Southern Illinois a little bit. So this game is going to help Northwestern get to their bowl game. I don't think that if Northwestern wanted to keep their West Division hopes alive, that losing to Duke was a good idea, frankly.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Jeez. I mean, I get it. It's not a Big Ten game. Maybe they bounce back, and the rest of the West Division's looking, not so hot right now. So it's still possible. Anything's possible. Northwestern's got to get something going on defense, though. They can't keep giving up almost 30 points a game and expect to win anything. They can use this particular game as an opportunity to adjust, but I think that Northwestern's got a bit of a talent issue on defense rather than a scheme issue. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah. The ESPN predictor there has them with a 95.3% win possibility.
So you're saying there's a chance?
You're saying there's a chance, yeah. I never quite know what to make of that matchup predictor, because it's either dead on or it's absolutely wrong, it seems like.
Well, that's the thing about odds, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
if Marshall walks into South Bend, what are you going to give them chance wise at beating Notre Dame? And yet they did.
And that they did, yeah.
And yet they did, yeah. Which I have thoughts on that, but we'll talk about that later.
Right. Well, hey, speaking of first-time coaches, which Notre Dame has, Nebraska has a new coach, Mickey Joseph. I know nothing about him. It looks to me, I think this is his first head coaching position, from what I can tell.
I think so. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know anything about him either.
Yeah, he's walking into a team that I'm guessing there's not a lot of, and I hate to say this about these guys, because I know they're good football players. I know they're strong. I know they know what they're doing. But if there was a solid bench there of solid talent, Frost would have done a lot better. So if Frost is not a good coach and leaves Nebraska where it is, then Mickey Joseph is walking into a team that it's a guaranteed rebuild. I'm sure he wants to win. Everybody wants to win, but he's got to be looking at this as a rebuilding year. And he's going into a game with number 6 Oklahoma. Like I said, if Nebraska had a bench full of talent, Mickey Joseph maybe has a chance if he comes in there and shakes things up and gets these boys motivated. but I just don't see that happening. I think what we're looking at here is a rout by Oklahoma. On the rivalry side, which is my favorite part, is that this is our oldest matchup of the week. It's just that the weight of these two teams is going to make the rivalry side of it just irrelevant. But this is the 88th meeting of Oklahoma and Nebraska. These are old-time rivals. This is the Sooners versus the Huskers. And like I said, this couldn't come at a worse time for Nebraska. I mean, I don't even know what to say. Nebraska has crumbled. And as we talked about earlier today, out of 7 coaches, the last 7 coaches at Nebraska, 2 of them were interim and the other 5 were fired. And prior to that, you had, was it Bob Devaney
and Tom Osborne?
And Tom Osborne are the 2 winningest coaches in Nebraska history. And together they cover about a 20-year stretch where Nebraska was a lot like our old Michigan in the 80s and the 90s, or well, from the 70s and the 80s that just couldn't lose. They were just that good. And that was Nebraska from in the 70s or the 80s and 90s. But they're not there anymore. Those guys are gone. That team is gone. Nebraska is fighting for survival in the way Michigan was during the Rich Rod and Hoke years. I mean, are we just looking at a bloodbath this weekend? What's going to happen?
So I'm gonna just dive into my notes here because
all right.
I have thoughts on this, but I don't. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I don't want to accidentally go off on a rabbit trail because I will do that. Because I mean, this could go either way. So I can't remember where I heard this exactly. I think it was on the Cover 3 podcast, which is a phenomenal podcast. Somebody said that when Scott Frost got fired, the minute he got fired or however long it took to update this, the betting line for this game actually moved more in favor of Nebraska.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
So
they're putting a lot of hope into Mickey Joseph.
Well, probably not so much Mickey Joseph as much as they're looking at the talent on Nebraska's team. So that's probably where I would disagree with what you were saying. I think Nebraska's actually got a great team. I don't know. I mean, I think defense clearly needs some help. Mm-hmm. I don't know necessarily if that's personnel issue or if that was a scheme issue. I know I'm pretty sure I saw Mickey Joseph was talking about making some changes on defense, not necessarily coaching, but like scheme wise, I think. Mm-hmm. Could be wrong, but I know that he is going in making some change. He has made some changes. So I know there's that at least, but yeah, I mean, I think Nebraska does have a ton of talent, and I mean, especially offensively, they've got some serious firepower there. So I think the problem when Scott Frost was there, which I guess was just a week ago, I'm talking about years ago.
It wasn't that long ago.
Wasn't that long ago. Yeah. It was his play calling. Honestly, it was his play calling. I mean, that onside kick when they're up 2 scores against Northwestern, that's just bonkers. Why would you do that? At that point, like, I understand, you have a shot at putting the game away, but you're up 2 scores. Your offense is moving the ball well. I don't want to say at will, but they were moving it well. I mean, just play a traditional game plan here and don't bet on so much, or don't bet on a single play so much.
Yeah.
And I think that was Scott Frost's problem. There were stupid mistakes. There were dumb penalties that they shouldn't have taken. It really makes you feel like it was a fairly undisciplined team. If they play a clean game on defense, I think that they actually have a shot at this. And I mean, they have to play a good, clean, solid game. I think that the offense, Nebraska's offense, is more than capable at beating Oklahoma. But if they get into a shootout, that's Oklahoma all day long. And What's interesting is that Oklahoma also has a first-year coach as well. Brent Venables, I feel like it is. They're clearly having more success. So I think that the difference is that they have an established system, which to me says that if Nebraska has the talent, all that's missing is some cohesion, a better scheme. I mean,
Mhm.
I think that they're just a decent scheme away from being able to actually start winning things.
Yeah. Brent Venables. Yeah, you're right. Brent Venables
okay.
is the his first season there.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the stats, wow. See, so Casey Thompson has 866 yards passing,
Whew.
and Gabriel here, Dylan Gabriel for Oklahoma only has 529.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they're matched it. I mean, Gabriel has 5 touchdowns. Casey Thompson has 4, although Casey Thompson has thrown 3 interceptions and Gabriel hasn't thrown any.
Yep.
And
that right there is probably going to end up being the difference.
Right. The turnovers are always the killer. That's what I was just going to say. That's what killed Michigan so often during Rich Rod and Hoke's years. But yeah.
Do you also see the difference between the two defenses here? Nebraska is giving up 31 points a game.
Yeah.
Oklahoma is giving up 8.
Right.
All right. And I don't care that Oklahoma played Kent State and UTEP. I don't care that that's the case because Nebraska has played Georgia Southern and lost.
And lost, yeah.
And Georgia Southern had a first-year coach.
Right.
So strength of schedule is out the window. If Nebraska plays some defense, maybe they have a shot.
Yeah.
That's right.
So if Joseph comes in and gets them motivated, I mean, that's the key factor here. So if they've got the talent, I'm sure Joseph knows what he's doing. If Nebraska's bench is talented, then if he can get in there and motivate them, maybe just the adrenaline of having a new guy in there and knowing that Scott Frost doesn't have to worry about it anymore. Wasn't it one of the Nebraska players said that they just wanted to see Coach Frost happy again?
Yeah, they just wanted to win to see Frost happy again.
Yeah.
Oh,
so maybe if they don't have to worry about that anymore, the monkey's off their back, they can just play.
Right.
And
yeah,
maybe that'll be the difference.
There's something to be said about rallying behind the flag after a big event like that too. So
yeah,
who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
So what's your prediction there?
I feel bad, but I have to give Oklahoma the win. I think that they're going to win at 38-34. I think it's going to end up in a shootout, and I think Oklahoma's better prepared for it.
Yeah. What we need is a board you can hold up. Since we don't know how to do the on-screen graphics, you just need to hold up a board. This is like Lee Corso. Doesn't Lee Corso do that?
Well, he's got the hats, the helmets,
right.
Yeah. Which I guess we could steal that. I don't know.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the star of the West Division, Colorado at Minnesota. Minnesota being the star, not Colorado.
Yes.
So Minnesota, as we've seen, Minnesota has dominated with a vengeance in those first 2 games. Colorado has been vengeanced upon in their first 2 games. Colorado looks weak on both sides of the ball. I think we've got, again, a standard classic non-conference game against a powerful team and a weak team. And I know at one point they were talking about not doing these anymore, but here we are. Minnesota, as we've said, is the only undefeated team left in the West after 2 grueling weeks of football. The Gophers are heavily favored in this one. What do you think? I guess we sort of talked about this earlier, but are we witnessing Minnesota as taking over the West Division, or it might be too early to say that with Wisconsin still out there? But they're definitely controlling the season so far.
Yeah, I mean, I know I said all that stuff earlier. Like Minnesota's clear, and it's true. Minnesota is clearly the best team in the West Division right now, but this could be the case. It could certainly be the case that Minnesota is taking over the West Division from here on out. I do have a couple interesting stats about Minnesota that I think are worth pointing out. First off, they're second in the Big Ten for total points scored. The next best West Division team at this is Purdue at 6th place.
Okay.
So then Nebraska at 8th place. Then you have Wisconsin and Iowa are at the literal bottom. So in terms of, what did I say that was? Points scored? Yeah, in terms of points scored in the Big Ten, Minnesota is number 2. And then the rest of the West Division is 6th place or worse, with the 2 best teams or the 2 powerhouses being at the literal bottom. So this is right now really looking like Minnesota's conference to lose, because they're currently the only team that is capable of scoring a lot on offense, or at all on offense, frankly. Mm-hmm. So this is as good a time as any for Minnesota to just go ahead and walk through the rest of their season on their way to the Big Ten title game with how everyone else is playing right now. And I think that this is going to be, unfortunately for Colorado, probably another warm-up game for Minnesota. Minnesota, I believe it was after they lost to Bowling Green State last year, actually went on the road to Colorado and shut them out. So, yeah, so they're pretty good against Colorado. I can't remember if that was before or after the Bowling Green game. But those 2 things happened in the same season, which is just crazy to me.
Right. Yeah. Well, and now, okay, so what's interesting, though, you said about the points scored or points for, Minnesota is number 2. Nebraska is number 1. But Nebraska only gets to be number 1 because they've played 1 additional game.
Oh, I was I think I was looking at average, maybe.
Oh, maybe at average?
Yeah.
Well, no, you said Minnesota was number 2, right? For points scored?
Yeah, average points per game.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
For total points, Nebraska is actually number 1, but I would say that's only because they've played 3 games now instead of just 2.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So they're going to drop here pretty fast. But yeah, you're right. Even Wisconsin and Iowa for total points scored are at the bottom.
Iowa's defense is at the bottom. Iowa's offense is not actually on the board.
Yeah. Well, all right, that's true too. That's a good season when your offense never actually has to score, I guess.
Yeah, really. I guess if they didn't have to score, if they didn't have to score, that would be one thing. It's the fact that they needed to score and literally couldn't, so their defense bailed them out. That's got me like,
right.
What?
Okay. So what's your call for the Minnesota Colorado game?
Yeah, Minnesota's going to win this one. It's 56-10.
56. Yeah, it's going to be a smashing.
Yeah.
All right, New Mexico State is back. This time they're playing Wisconsin. Wisconsin's kind of scratching their heads right now, trying to figure out what's going on because they lost to Washington State. Although the Washington State loss doesn't look as bad as we thought, because Washington State has who did they lose to? Shoot. I got to keep these things handy.
Did they lose? I thought they were 2-0 now.
Are they 2-0? They hold on. I'll get there. Live television. Live streaming.
No, they're 2-0.
They're 2-0?
Yeah. That was the first game was they beat Idaho 24-17.
Yeah.
Which
what was I thinking here? Jeez. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, their loss to Washington State doesn't look as bad because Washington State is 2-0, the undefeated on their side. Although it's only 2 games, but New Mexico State has been outscored more than 3-1.
Jeez.
In their games, and Wisconsin is hanging in there.
They're trying. They're doing their best.
What do we got here? Wisconsin. Yeah, this is what gets me. Wisconsin went 38-0. They shut out Illinois State, and then they lose by a field goal to Washington State. But if they're back in their groove, then this week, again, this is a classic non-conference game. They're just going to steamroll New Mexico. I mean, the stats tell us that Wisconsin should win this game, but what do you think? What are we looking at?
Yeah,
this is at Camp Randall too, so it's New Mexico State coming to Camp Randall, so
yeah,
everything is where they need it to be. Although they did lose to Washington State last week at Camp Randall, I don't know anymore. None of this makes sense. What is going on?
It's like that Fansville commercial.
Yeah,
that new one is hilarious.
Oh, I haven't seen the new one.
Oh my goodness.
I'll look it up.
It's phenomenal. Look, so Yeah, I mean, Wisconsin's going to win this game. I mean, I don't have anything really to say about this game because I mean, my heart goes out to Jerry Kill. I mean, it's not like Minnesota was terrible under him. I mean, I think he's credited for rebuilding something over there. But I mean, he left.
Team.
Yeah, he left. Who was the guy after him? Tracy Claeys.
Oh,
he left Tracy Claeys with a bunch of good players and then Tracy Claeys left a good program over for PJ Fleck. And now obviously they're doing really good. As much as there was a bit of a dumpster fire there at one point, I'm not sure what that was all about, but right. I mean, but really my heart goes out to Jerry Kill because I mean, they travel to Minnesota, they travel to Wisconsin now, and they had already had a loss against UTEP. So this is just not going to be a very good season for them.
Yeah.
And Wisconsin's going to be able to just have a little bit of a practice. But like for me, I'm looking at Wisconsin and I mean, it's like you said, I'm just scratching my head. I mean, right now, I don't really even see them having a chance against Minnesota. I think even Purdue would be tough. Illinois might even beat them. Just looking at Illinois' offense, they're pretty decent. Mm-hmm. This game should not be close. I mean, New Mexico State's averaging 8 points a game and they're giving up 27. This game's not going to be close. I think it'll be good for Wisconsin to get back up on their feet, but they've really got to figure out some better offense before conference play or they're going to be in a world of hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your prediction on this one?
31-0. It's the first shutout that I'm predicting.
All right. Wisconsin 31-0, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Our fan favorite this year, Iowa. Nevada at Iowa. This is a first game alert. Nice. So this is the very first time Nevada and Iowa have ever played each other, which can leave things kind of up in the air. I don't know. I guess it depends on how much film they watch, but anytime two teams come together for the first time, you could be in for something unexpected. Maybe not, given that it's no, I don't want to say that. Never mind. But that might be the only interesting thing about this game is that it's a first game alert. Iowa's 1-1, as we've talked about. They've got a total of 14 points over 2 games. And those were all defense?
No, it was like, what was it? 6 points in the first game, I think, were defense.
So they've got a total of 14 points.
I'm sorry. It was they had 2 safeties in the first game, I think. I'm pretty sure. Right. So it was 4 points, and then they had a
field goal.
Yeah.
And then the second game, they actually had a touchdown.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So, but either way, 14 points total for 2 games for Iowa. I don't know that that's ever happened to them before. But again, this is a game that Iowa should win. Nevada is not really on a par with the Big Ten, you would think. And again, it's you just don't know what to say anymore because Iowa should have a lot more than 14 points. Iowa should be up there with Michigan and Michigan State and Ohio State. They should be they should have 60, 70 points at this point over 2 games, 2 non-conference games. And they don't. So I don't know what to make of that. What do you make of it?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't. I mean, conventional logic tells you it's a night game at Iowa. Many a good team have gone in there and lost because of that, just being a night game at Iowa. But honestly, I don't think Iowa's ever had an offense this bad. I mean, their defense has outscored their offense or outscored them in week 1, like we were just talking about. They only managed the single touchdown against Iowa State and an Iowa State team that, frankly, they didn't even look that good themselves either. So, normally, no matter how bad Iowa looks early in the season, they still beat Iowa State. They had, 6 straight before last week or something like that. So,
Iowa?
Yeah. So they do still have the night game advantage. It's a great atmosphere there at Kinnick Stadium, but frankly, logic is just out the window at this point now because Iowa simply just cannot score. Nevada averages 34 points per game. And I really don't care that it's against weaker competition, because at least even in their loss, they still doubled Iowa's highest scoring game so far this season. So to be completely honest, I think Iowa's in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too. I'm not sure if Kirk Ferentz is just at that same situation that Lloyd Carr was in back in 2007,
yeah,
where he stayed on a year too long, maybe.
Yeah.
But give us your prediction. What do you got?
You ready for this one?
I'm ready.
I'm taking Nevada. I am. Call it bold.
Right.
You can say I'm hating on Iowa's defense. I don't care. You can't barely beat an FCS team and then lose to an Iowa State team that turned the ball over 3 times and expect me to think that you're going to win your next game. I've got Nevada 17-6, and that 6 is going to be 3 safeties.
Why not?
Really, though? Why not?
Why not?
At this point?
All right. Well, let's go to the side of the Big Ten that's playing a little bit harder on average. We've got Western Kentucky to Indiana. Both of these teams are 2-0. They appear to be evenly matched, actually, or at least close enough for a margin of error. What else do we have? Although Western Kentucky is favored in this game, and I think it's because of their offense. They're putting more points on the board. Indiana might have an edge, though, because they've never lost to Kentucky. This is or Western Kentucky, which I realize is just a rivalry thing. But by the same token, I think it gives them a mental edge if they can walk in there and say they've never lost to them. It gives them, I would think, it would give them a little bit of a confidence boost. But what at this point do you think Indiana has to do to keep their non-conference record clean and perfect?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to need to slow down Western Kentucky's offense for sure. Indiana is currently 12th in the Big Ten for total yards allowed. They're 13th in the Big Ten for rushing yards allowed, 10th for passing yards allowed. And I mean, that's just really not good news when you're going up against a Western Kentucky offense that's putting up 44 points per game and mostly by using their passing attack. Right now, Indiana is actually better at defending against the pass than they are the run, but I don't think that they've faced an offense quite as complete as Western Kentucky's right now. And granted, we're only 2 weeks into the season. I get it. But the other thing, though, is offense. I mean, Indiana ranks near the bottom in the Big Ten in all major offensive stats. So, I mean, the defense is going to need to be on their A game, or this one could end up being an early setback for the Hoosiers, for sure.
Yeah. And it's, well, let's see. Yeah, you're saying, Western Kentucky has scored 87 points in 2 games.
Wow.
Is that 2 games? Yeah, 2 games.
43.5 per game.
Right. Indiana is at 58 points. So, yeah, their offense is a little bit slower to score.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, what's your prediction for this one?
So, again, I apologize to the Big Ten. I guess I'm going to be kind of a pessimist this week, but I've got Western Kentucky winning 38-24. I think that they're just faster on offense. You know, Western Kentucky, I remember watching them play against Michigan State last year, and they just played with reckless abandon. And Michigan State kind of let that get to them for a couple of quarters, but then, you know, they were strong enough to be able to hold them down.
Yeah, and make those
eventually. Yeah. I don't think Indiana's going to do that. I think Indiana's not strong enough. So I think Western Kentucky's going to win.
What's the score, though?
Oh, I didn't give it. Wait, did I give a score? 38-24.
Oh, maybe you did.
38-24. I guess we do need that sign.
38. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
So that would, okay. Yeah. So if Indiana loses, it brings an end to the East Division's perfect record.
Sorry.
But it's got to happen at some point.
Yeah.
All right, our favorite team. We're switching over to Connecticut at Michigan. According to ESPN, Michigan has a better chance of beating UConn than they did Hawaii last weekend. That game was essentially a rout. I'm thinking back to, was it 2012 the last time that Michigan played UConn? 2011?
2010,
2010?
right? Wasn't it Rich Rod's second year?
It might have been. I know that they just barely won that game.
They just barely beat UMass, but Connecticut, I think they beat 30-10. And now, for whatever reason, I feel like I'm picturing Hoke on the sidelines. We might need to look that up real quick, because that's
We
actually
might need to. Yes,
that's
I think that
killing me.
was earlier than that.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, later than that.
I'm
Let me
not
see
sure.
here. It wasn't 2012. 2012 is the UMass game, and that was 63-13.
2010.
Was it the 2010 game?
Yeah. So, yeah, that was okay. So in 2010, Michigan played Connecticut and UMass.
All right.
Yep.
Am I thinking of a different game? It was because there was the year they played UConn that I thought that they just barely won it. It was they were
Akron.
was it Akron? All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then forget everything I said. How do you think Michigan's going to do against UConn?
Akron was 24 in 2013. Anyway, against UConn this year. Yeah, well, you know, Michigan's not 2013 Michigan right now, so they're going to run all over UConn. No disrespect to UConn at all, you know, but there's definitely a talent mismatch here that Michigan's going to be able to take advantage of. I mean, UConn's only positive right now is that they rush for over 200 yards a game. It's pretty good, but they haven't faced a defense nearly as good as Michigan's, and running defense is kind of Michigan's thing. So they're only allowing 111 yards per game. So yeah, Michigan's going to be rolling here for the third straight week. It's going to be a third shutout. And I get it. Everybody keeps saying, well, Michigan's playing cupcakes. Yeah, well,
right. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's the non-conference games. At one point, I think even Harbaugh said that was going to come to an end.
He wanted it to, yeah, but there was something on the back end with scheduling, administrative wise, is that they paid UCLA like $1.5 million to get out of their home and home series with them. I'm not sure why, but that is a thing that happened, and it's, I mean, you know, all of the haters on Twitter are saying it's because Michigan doesn't want to play, you know, good teams.
Yeah, well, like we've talked about, there's a toss up there because sometimes for these smaller teams, that's the most exposure they get. Yeah, and it allows them to show their program to the country, and hopefully it helps enrollment and things like that.
Yeah,
I found it though. It's 2013 Michigan versus UConn. Michigan was actually ranked 15th, and it was 24-21 the final score.
Oh, I can't believe I missed that. Yeah, you're right. Oh, I remember watching that game too.
Yeah, I know it was one of those. They should have smashed them, or they should have beat them. Mm-hmm. I mean, they should have controlled that game, dominated that game, and they didn't. They just barely got it. But that was, you know, those were the disastrous Rich Rod Hoke years.
Man, that's
so it's hard to think about.
It is.
What's your prediction for the Michigan UConn game?
Michigan 56-10, which I think was the same final for their Hawaii game.
I think it was, yeah. All right, Rutgers, our surprise team of the year. I was not expecting Rutgers to do much at all, but here they are sitting at 2-0. Based on the stats, it looks like Rutgers' offense should easily outclass Temple. I think Temple lost to Washington State and somebody else.
Looks like Duke and Louisiana.
Duke and Louisiana? Oh, do they not play Washington State?
Oh,
I think it's somebody else. Or did Duke play Temple?
Well, Temple and Duke played.
All right.
And then Temple also played. It's actually the Lafayette Leopards.
Ooh, nice. Yeah. But I don't always expect a whole lot from Rutgers, but this year they're doing well to get started. What are you seeing in this game?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of surprising to see Rutgers at 2-0 and looking as much like a Big Ten team as they ever have, frankly. Offensively, I mean, they look good. They're going to push around Temple, who's 1-1 right now, allowing an average of a touchdown more than what they score per game. And, you know, if you're upside down in points scored to points allowed, then you're in for a rough season. So,
Yeah.
The cool thing about Rutgers, though, I was looking this up. So the cool thing about Rutgers is that they actually rank in the bottom half of the Big Ten in yards per game, but they're rushing for 270 yards per game, which is nearly 100 yards more than what they're passing for per game. So
All right.
the results might be a little skewed just because they played super weak teams in Wagner. They played a super weak Wagner team, and then they beat Boston College. Boston College was a little bit better. But the point is that Rutgers has a running game that's actually putting up some good numbers. I can't really remember if Rutgers has had like that good of an established running game since they joined the Big Ten. Maybe there are specific games here and there, but I don't know that they've had anything that's been like consistent. So
yeah, I don't think they have, because I think that's been part of the problem, is that they just get, every time they try to run, they get run over.
I don't know that they've had the offensive line to do it, frankly.
Right.
If I remember correctly, I think that they have a history of quarterbacks that need to escape the pocket because the pocket collapses pretty quickly on them.
Right.
So
yeah.
I mean, I think that's really something that's exciting about this Rutgers team going forward, and I think that's going to help them beat up on Temple and maybe win a few Big Ten games that they otherwise shouldn't be winning.
Yeah. They've got a decent history. This is their 37th game, and Rutgers actually leads in the series stats 21-16.
Wow.
So they must be historically fairly well matched teams. Although
Temple used to be pretty good, didn't they?
Well, last year Rutgers beat Temple 61-14.
Oh, that's not so good.
The year before that, or in 2013, it was more like a 23-20. But yeah, what's your prediction for this game?
I said 56-10 for this one too. I'm realizing that that's like my go-to for blowouts because like that's a good sort of midway hedge.
Yeah.
Like either they're really going to blow out the other team and score 60 points, or they're going to kind of blow them out and score 40 points. So like if you say 56, that's like a nice little, middle ground.
Well, yeah, score like that. What are you putting up? Like most of those points are in the first half.
Yeah.
And then the second half, you're throwing in your second and third stringers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm basing that mostly off of what they did to Wagner. I think Temple's probably a little bit better than Wagner, which, well, I guess that remains to be seen. But still, Rutgers is going to blow them out. So.
Right. Your microphone started to fade out there for a second.
Oh, it did?
Yep.
Testing.
Oh, there you go. He's back.
Woo.
All right. Penn State at Auburn. Penn State is, what are they, ranked 22 this week? Auburn is unranked. So this is Big Ten versus SEC. I'm thinking Auburn is not one of the best SEC teams. Seems like they're more of a mid-level over there.
Yeah,
down there.
They've had success against. They beat Alabama recently, but I can't remember when that was. I feel like that was the kick six. That was like, my goodness, was that like 6 or 7 years ago now?
Oh yeah, that was a little while ago. That was a good one.
Yeah. So they've got random games here or there, but
right. Penn State, it looks like might have the edge on this one for a slightly better offense. Looking at the stats. They've got, looks like they might have a tight game ahead of them. The Nittany Lions had no trouble scoring on Purdue. Or no, I'm sorry. They had some trouble scoring on Purdue. I can read my notes. They had no problem at all with Ohio. But I got to believe Auburn is better than both of those teams. But what are you looking for in this game?
I forgot to pull my notes back up. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think Auburn's going to be better. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure how this game's going to go either. So I think Penn State does have a slightly better offense, while Auburn's probably got the slightly better defense. The stat line here that I'm going to focus on, though, is that Penn State is rushing for 166 yards per game right now. And the reason that's important is because they only had 98 yards against Purdue. So they had to throw the ball a little bit more to keep up with Purdue's offense. But the thing is that Penn State threw the ball against Ohio just as much as they did against Purdue. So that tells me Penn State has a passing attack that can clearly take advantage of some weak secondaries, but the rushing attack is only beneficial when they aren't trying to outpace the opposing team's offense. So Auburn is scoring 33 points per game, but they've played a weak schedule so far. So depending on how Purdue ends up, where was I going with that? So depending on how Purdue ends up, Penn State obviously had to dig themselves out of a hole with that one. The question for me kind of ends up being, is Penn State going to have to keep up with Auburn? And if that's the case, Auburn's got the better defense. Auburn is at home. I would probably say Auburn in that case. And that's my thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like Penn State is always kind of a mystery. They're either on top or they're just, they waver somehow. They're an interesting team because what was last year? They didn't even have a winning season, did they?
No, they lost to, was it Illinois and then just fell apart after that?
I think so. Yeah. Which, I mean, historically, Penn State is a solid team.
Mm-hmm.
And they came into the Big Ten back in the 90s and we're doing just fine. But it seems like in the last few years, maybe ever since Paterno left and Franklin's been the coach, they're either really good or they're really average.
Franklin's all over the place.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize this. They were 11-11 coming in, or in their prior 22 games coming into this season. So
okay.
Yeah, so James Franklin is kind of an enigma because they recruit really well, but they just have never been able to, let's just use a term that everyone accused Michigan of for the longest time. They've never been able to get over the hump.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they won one Big Ten championship game, or they at least went to it.
Yeah.
I know they've got one win over Ohio State, but they haven't come close since.
Right.
So yeah, James Franklin's just kind of all over the place. I think he's kind of the story of like recruits really well, but can't do player development. And I remember what I was going to say with Purdue. Sorry, just to jump back a little bit. Depending on how Purdue is going to end up, Penn State has so far played a weak schedule too. Now, I know we're talking about Purdue. Maybe they have a shot at the West Division. Maybe they don't. They obviously looked really good in their last game. Who was it? I think it was Indiana State. They shut them out. So I think Purdue's probably going to be good, which is why Penn State, if it were played at Penn State or on a neutral field, I would say that Penn State would win this game. And that kind of foreshadows my pick.
Okay. What's your pick?
Well, the game's not being played at Penn State or a neutral field. It's being played at Auburn. And so I've got Auburn winning 28-21. I think. Yeah. I mean, Penn State went into West Lafayette and almost lost to Purdue. You know, if Sean Clifford's got a couple of miracle drives in him again, then sure, that's fine. You know, prove me wrong. But yeah. I think Purdue's got a weaker defense than what Auburn's got, and I don't think Penn State's ready for it just yet. It'll be close, but I think Auburn pulls it out.
All right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Penn State has been to the Big Ten championship once, and they played Wisconsin in the 2016 game. And they actually won.
Okay, yeah.
38-31. Yeah. All right, moving on to our old nemesis. Toledo at Ohio State. This is an in-state rivalry, in-state battle. I wouldn't call it a rivalry. I'm not sure Ohio State has any rivals outside of Michigan and Alabama.
Clemson.
But this is a MAC team against a Big Ten team, and it's actually only their fourth meeting.
That's crazy to me.
That's insane. I mean, they're not even that far apart, and they've only played 4 times.
Yeah.
But Ohio is a state ruled by Ohio State. The Buckeyes don't give in to anyone anymore. And I think we're looking at just a basic non-conference game here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've got thoughts on this one, and I'm kind of going to go all over the place because
Okay.
I actually think that this game is super interesting. So I'm going to preface what I'm about to say with this. I expect this to be a blowout.
Mhm.
Okay. But now here's why it could be interesting. So Toledo is currently averaging 46 points per game. Ohio State's only averaging 33. Toledo is also averaging 5 points allowed per game. Ohio State is averaging 11. Toledo is rushing for 50 yards more per game than Ohio State is. And they're allowing 150 yards less passing per game than Ohio State is. And they've got one thing that Ohio State doesn't, a shutout. So I can already hear what Ohio State fans are going to be saying, but we played Notre Dame and Toledo. What?
I think I'm going to say it.
Yeah. Okay. I know. I get it, but we played Notre Dame and and Toledo played Long Island University, which I didn't know existed, and UMass. And that's a valid point, or at least it was until Notre Dame lost to Marshall. Okay.
All right.
So also Ohio State allowed 12 points against Arkansas State. And I'll throw this one out there. Arkansas State played Grambling the week prior and only scored 3 points against them. So
yeah,
again, I don't expect Toledo to win this game, but these are interesting stat lines to pay attention to because
right.
Toledo is 2-0 and they probably feel a certain kind of way coming into Columbus. I mean, they would be a classic underdog story, and everyone wrote off Marshall against Notre Dame, and yet,
yeah,
any given Saturday.
Yeah, well, if it's going to happen, it would happen this season.
Yeah,
it would fit right in. But yeah, I'm looking at ESPN's FPI there, and it's Toledo has a 2.6% chance of pulling it out. So
yeah. So you're saying there's a chance.
There's a chance. They've got Ohio State by 31. That's a sizable score to overcome. But
so we do our we call the score. We do our little competition where we call the score, and whoever's closest.
I always guess.
Yeah, you always guess.
You have the actual stats, I guess.
Yeah, and yet I think you win most years. I think I won last year, but
I don't know. I think you win every year. I think I hold in there for a while, and it looks like I'm actually doing something. Like I have a system of guessing that actually works, and then by the end of the season, it's just over.
Who cares? Well, so we've got that game that we play, and for that game, I'm gonna call an interesting score line here. I'm calling Ohio State to win 31-21, and that seems close. I understand that seems close. I feel like Toledo's gonna play a little bit of spirited football, and I feel like I'm wrong, but I'm just gonna throw this out there. I would not be surprised if Toledo won.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be shocked, but afterwards, I wouldn't be surprised.
Ohio State. I mean, other than the fact that they're winning like they usually do, they don't seem to be playing at the same level they were last year.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I actually don't think that they looked all that good against Notre Dame. And then obviously now with Notre Dame having lost to Marshall, that's looking kind of sketchy.
Right.
And with allowing 12 points to Arkansas State, I get it. It's just 12 points, whatever. But like, the way Arkansas State scored those points, I mean, they walked down the field a couple of times and they were one play away from those field goals being touchdowns. I mean, that's how many field goals is that? So that's 4 field goals. If that's 4 touchdowns, then it's 45-28 at that point, final score, which I understand is still, a solid win for Ohio State, but that's an FCS team we're talking about.
Right.
So it's just the fact that was a possibility well into the game is just kind of I don't know. I don't think Ohio State's actually their usual self right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell, maybe Harbaugh was right. Some people wake up on third and think they hit a triple.
That's such a great saying. It's so fun.
All right. Moving on to Michigan State at Wisconsin. MSU is favored by 3.5
Washington.
points. Oh, Washington. Yeah.
Sorry.
Wait a minute. Oh, yeah, Washington. All right.
I was like, hold up. What week is it?
Wait. Yeah. They're favored by 3.5. Washington has the better offense. MSU has the better defense. MSU and Washington have obliterated the lower level teams. Oh, and Penix, the QB for Washington, has a better completion percentage than Thorne. And aren't they going to? Yeah, they're going to Washington to play this game. So I heard that Tucker was telling his team, that they have to get an extra hour of sleep every night to prepare for Washington. I don't know why it's an hour. I would think they would have to go to bed 3 hours earlier, but
yeah,
because that's the time difference. But I guess jet lag maybe isn't as bad as I think it is.
Unless it's an extra hour 3 days prior, maybe like 1 extra hour for 3 days prior. Whatever. I don't know.
Whatever.
No, it doesn't make sense.
This is meeting 5 between these teams. The all-time record stands at 2-2. So somebody's walking away after this game, owning the series. Like we said, Washington has the home field advantage, but it's looking pretty tight. It looks like these guys are evenly matched. Not on the same side of the ball, though, which is where the trick is going to come in. But what are you expecting from our Spartans in this game?
Our Spartans, that hurt.
The Dogs, I guess. No, you got to call them the Dogs now.
The Dogs, yeah.
The Spartan Dogs, which is a term I have never heard of until Mel Tucker became coach, so I don't know.
It is not historically accurate. I'm just going to toss that one out there.
All right.
Yeah, so the Spartans are, my bad. I'm sorry. We're not biased here.
Not at all.
Don't look. Yeah, well, I'm looking to see if Peyton Thorne can throw the ball as well as he's been able to against Washington. So, I mean, yeah, Sparty's putting up points. They're slinging the ball around pretty well. I mean, but every once in a while there's a slip up. You know, Thorne already has 3 interceptions so far in the season against 2 teams that aren't exactly known for good secondaries. So the problem is that this week they're going up against a Washington team that's only allowing 121 yards passing per game. If Thorne starts throwing interceptions, then they'll have to put a lot of pressure on the running game, and that's going to be a problem if Michigan State secondary can't stop Washington's stellar passing attack. So really, Thorne's got to play a clean game. I think if Thorne plays a clean game and they can throw the ball as much as they can run the ball, then Michigan State should have a pretty solid chance. But they have very obviously not faced a defense as good as what Washington has right now.
Right. What's your prediction for this game?
Man, I'm just anti-Big Ten today, I guess. I've got Washington winning 31-21.
31-21, yeah. Yeah, the FPI is 53.4% for MSU.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's just a margin of error there. That's a toss-up game.
Yeah, and I mean I'm looking at like Washington's putting up almost 600 yards of offense a game, and Michigan State is allowing almost 300 yards of offense a game, and that's against Akron and Western Michigan. And Akron, I actually found out, is in the bottom 20 of FPS. So they're one of the 20 worst teams in FPS.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, that 52-0 shutout, that's about as meaningful as Michigan's win against Hawaii. It looks awesome. And, you know, it's great for the players to get experience and stuff like that. And for especially Michigan to answer some questions. But it's just Washington is a completely different animal.
Right.
So.
All right, yeah. We got your prediction on that one, 31-21. All right. Our last game of the week, Southern Methodist at Maryland. I'm not sure why I saved this for the last game. But But again, we're looking at a couple of fairly evenly matched teams here. Maryland is putting up they're averaging 43.5 points per game. Southern Methodist 46.5. And then as far as points allowed, it's Maryland 13, Southern Methodist 15.5. Tagovailoa has a better completion percentage, which will probably be the key to the Maryland win. Maryland win if they win. So this game may not be on a par with like a Penn State or a Michigan State. I don't think Southern Methodist is necessarily a powerhouse team, but they are putting up essentially the same stats that Maryland is. Maryland has a slightly stronger defense. The call is Maryland by 3. What are you expecting?
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. And honestly, this is going to be a pivotal game for Maryland. So this is probably the best Maryland's looked through 2 games of football since they joined the Big Ten. And a big part of that is probably the fact that they're 2-0. So yeah, I mean, they played a couple of weak teams, but they beat them convincingly. And if they want to start looking like contenders, this is their first great chance to do that. So put another undefeated team away and do it convincingly. And suddenly, you know, Maryland's looking like a team that you don't want to underestimate. On paper, SMU actually has the better stats so far, despite the weaker schedule. They do like to toss the ball around a lot, which could be difficult for Maryland's secondary, which isn't so great at defending against the pass. But I really like Maryland's offense in this particular game, just because I think that SMU's played teams that are weaker. I think Maryland's win against Buffalo is actually better than what SMU has been able to do so far. Although I see they've got a win against North Texas. That's a good win. But I think Maryland's offense is going to be the story of this game. I think they'll win it for them. What's your prediction? Maryland 31-17. 31-17. All right. Yeah, I think that'd be a good win for Maryland. Although I think I give Maryland too much of a hard time. I think they're a much better team than Rutgers. I think they've done much better in the Big Ten than Rutgers has. But they went through some turmoil there too with their coaches. But I think that's pretty much settled now. Yeah, Mike Loxley's been there a couple of years now, hasn't he? Yeah, ever since who was the Michigan guy that went there and then got kicked out? Wasn't it Tim Drevno? No, I don't remember. No, it was I think it was a defensive coordinator who was there, and yeah, he got fired. Durkin. DJ Durkin, yeah. Oh yeah, he got fired because of what happened at that one practice. Oh yeah, the kid died, didn't he? Yeah, he died from heat exhaustion. Passed out on the field. Yeah. Oh man, that would be terrible. Yeah. Well, on that note, all right. Have a good night. Yeah, have a good night. It's Mike Loxley is the coach over in Maryland now. He's got a 14-18 record. Not as bad as Scott Frost. Not as bad as Scott Frost, but this could be a defining season for him as far as whether or not he's going to remain coach or find a new job. Yeah. But those are the games for this weekend. Hope everybody enjoyed our live podcast. If you are live, podcast. And if you stuck around with us to the end, I really appreciate you sticking around through our rambling and hope you enjoyed what we were talking about there. Mac, take us out. Have a great week, everybody. Enjoy some awesome football. Thanks for sticking with us through all the technical difficulties and getting used to live streaming. And enjoy some good football. We'll talk to you all again soon. Excellent. And remember, this is Team Rivalry. Gosh, there's so many buttons to push.